Action.
Good afternoon, I'm Alex Stokes. Today we'll be covering the strength and conditioning program for Plant City University. My colleagues' names are on the bottom. So, to begin with, we'll speak about our mission statement. I'll let you read it for yourself, but to summarize is that we want to bring athletes into our program and develop them physically and to build their character. So what I mean by this is that we want to use new data and technology to enhance their playing career, but then besides that, to build their character, that we would like to make sure whatever phase of life that they're going to next, whether that be business opportunities, jobs, more playing either at a different school or at a professional level, or if they go in to build their family, they can use the ideals and morals that we've covered here in the strength room and that they transfer into the next phase of their life. So our coaching philosophy is a direct extension of our mission statement. So as I said earlier, that we're trying to build better men than players on the field. And this comes through leadership started by the players. So from the coaching staff, we'll use our captains and our seniors to deliver the message that it's not, it doesn't matter wins or losses necessarily, as long as the standard is met, and that standard is set by the coaching staff and the older players. And as I mentioned earlier through the mission statement, is that we want to take their talent level and increase that through the use of newer technology and research. So to start off with our needs analysis, we're a Division III school located in Plant City. We have 40 players, all male, ages 18 to 25. The bioenergetic analysis, you have a high demand of your phosphagen systems, which is your ATP PCR system. This is due, you will see this in running the bases or catching a pop fly. These are very short in nature, in duration. So then you have your glycolytic systems next. You have a moderate to high demand of those. This would be from running multiple bases or a pitcher throwing multiple innings. And then lastly, you have a low demand of the aerobic system. This is because there's no sustained movement in baseball just due to the nature of the sport. So to continue, you have your movement analysis, and we'll break this down into pitching and hitting. So through pitching, you'll have some of your main movements are your pelvic and torso rotation, internal rotation, and then elbow extension. Pitchers move through all three planes of motion, transverse, sagittal, and frontal. Hitting, you will see spine and hip rotation, hip and knee flexion, and then ankle dorsiflexion. Again, batters, they will move through all three planes of motion. To talk a little bit about injuries, which Brock will cover next, more in depth, but you see any joint that has excess stress on it, like the UCL, rotator cuff, oblique, or labrums, is where you see your injuries most common at. But as I said, Brock will cover that more later. So the overview of the training year. The off-season starts in July, preseason starts in January, and the season starts in February. Just to mention, we'll do most of our work in the off-season, which Avery will cover, and then as the season starts, we're maintaining strength until June, which is when the championship will be.
All right, my name is Brock, and I'm going to be going over the injuries. As Alex just mentioned, he talked about our mission statement and what we're trying to do here as a program, but obviously, just like any other sport, injuries can occur. So I'm going to go over some of the most common upper and lower body injuries. We're looking at upper body injuries. The one at the top here, obviously the UCL injuries, that's that ulnar collateral ligament in the elbow. This is starting to become more and more of a big deal as the game has progressed. Baseball in general has gone a lot more where you can't move up unless you got a lot of velocity as a pitcher. And this increased velocity just puts increased strain on that ulnar collateral ligament and is causing a lot of more and more damage to that ligament. And this injury when you do tear that ligament, it requires a surgery, infamously the Tommy John surgery, and this takes quite a long time to recover from. It is pretty much season injuring and can maybe even affect the next season for some pitchers. Some pitchers aren't the same after UCL injuries, so it's a really big one, and it's very important that for pitchers, that repetitive throwing, you want to give them a lot of rest. You want to give them their necessary rest. You don't want to rush a lot of pitchers. Next, we're looking at oblique strains and sprains. A lot of oblique injuries, they can come from hitters. If your core is not really strong, you can swing and kind of pull those muscles in the oblique and really cause some damage there. This is kind of a more not serious injury. A lot of oblique strains, if it's a lower strain, that'll be out for maybe just a couple weeks, but there's severity that progresses with that, but they shouldn't cause like season-ending injuries. Another thing is rotator cuffs. Obviously, all players, position, and pitchers are doing a lot of throwing, so it can cause a lot of rotator cuff damage over time. Torn labrum, kind of the same thing. Concussions are also a thing. Obviously, like I said, you got pitchers throwing a lot more velocity. They're throwing a lot more, like 90-mile-an-hour fastballs, and if that gets away from them, hits a batter in the head, that can potentially cause a concussion. There's even some cases where guys run into each other, they collide on the field, like say in the outfield, for example, that can cause concussions, things like that. And one of the injuries that you can't really do a whole lot to prevent is hand and finger. Same thing, if a pitcher throws a ball and it gets away, hits a guy in the hand while he's holding it back, potentially break a finger, fracture a finger. There's a whole lot of different things like that that can do that. Now moving on to lower body injuries, we got groin and hip. These injuries kind of come from just having not a lot of stability or strength kind of in the lower legs. For pitchers, a lot of the times these injuries happen as you rotate. In baseball, there's a lot of rotation involved, hitters and pitchers both. So, and also you got a lot of quick movements. Like as soon as you hit the ball, you sprint first. So that quick movement right there, you can end up pulling a muscle in the groin. That's what typically happens there. ACL, common injury in a lot of different sports. In baseball, there's some cases where a ball is going over a player's head. He tries to make a catch. He jumps up in the air, lands wrong. This one's kind of one of the things where the change of direction and stuff can cause that tear in the ACL, and this is another very serious injury that can cause a lot of players to miss a lot of time. So one of the things we can do with our strength and conditioning program is kind of strengthen the players' ligaments in their legs, make sure that their lower extremities are as strong as they can be. Leg fractures. But a lot of leg fractures, I'd say you probably see like someone slides into a base wrong. A lot of times that can be where this occurs, and things like that. This one is just kind of a, I'd say outlier injuries. There's not a whole lot you can do to prevent that. Just keep those legs strong. Hamstring. A lot of hamstring injuries with pitchers, you'll mainly see that on their landing leg, because they're coming off the mound and putting a lot of force forward and landing on that leg, and if their hamstring's not stable and powerful, it can really cause that to strain. So sprinting as well. Whenever you're running, you can pull a hammy, stuff like that. Ankle sprains is very common. You got a lot of running from grass to on field and stuff like that. Ankle sprains can occur if you just have low ankle stability. That's just another common injury to have.
Hi, my name is Jack Sparkman, and I'm going to be going over our performance assessment. So, obviously as a baseball player, the highest level is the MLB. So that's what we're shooting for, even though we're a D3 school. So the MLB Combine, it's a newer thing, started in 2021, but they do multiple tests, and a few of those are the force plate jumps, 60-yard dash, off-bat velocity, pitch exit velocity, pitch RPMs, range of motion, and grip strength. So what stinks for us is that we didn't plan ahead too much, but we're going to still be able to track this. So we can't track the exit velocity or the RPMs, but we can track things that will directly influence that, and so that's what we're going to do. So these are the 6 things we're really going to try and focus on as Plant City University. So we're going to work on the deadlift, the squat, core movements, bench press, range of motion tests, and then sprint time / sleds. So the deadlift, one of the kings of all movement, uses the whole body. So you got to use your hamstrings, your quads, your core, your arms, biceps, and triceps, shoulders, and your back. This is going to improve basically every asset of the field that we're looking for. So it's going to improve your grip strength, horse plate jump, batting, pitching, and then even your sprints because you're trying to explode. And that deadlift provides power. It's squat. It's pretty similar to the deadlift in nature of affecting all the aspects of the field except for grip strength. So that squat's going to be using our quads, our hamstrings, and our back core. And so it's all going to improve. So our force plate jumps are going to produce more power when we go to this motion, and we're going to be able to explode more. Sprints, same thing with the explosiveness, because the squat provides power. Hitting and pitching, just because that front leg, so batters are going to step, and pitchers are also going to step, so it's going to just produce more force coming from the lower body to the upper body. And then we got our core movements. As Brock talked about, there's a lot of injuries in that core, so we want to make sure that is prevented. So we're going to do lots of rotational things, slams with balls. And that's going to improve both hitting and pitching. So another thing we're going to work on is our range of motion. We're going to do this actively and passively, so that's going to be stretching. And then band work. So some of the band works we're going to do monster walks, which are going to look like this. And then we're going to have our external rotation, internal rotation, and then other different movements that are going to incorporate that. We're going to have this movement here. I mean, there's going to be so many different types of variations we can do with our bands to help prevent injuries in that shoulder and elbow that Brock just recently talked about. So next, we're going to do bench press. Just going to produce power in that upper body. So that's going to improve hitting and pitching in both aspects of the field. Lastly, we have sprint training and sleds. So that's really only going to affect our sprints, but we do want our player, once they hit the ball, to run that 30 yards to first base and be good and be fast. But that's all I have.
So continuing on where Jack left off, we've talked about how we're going to be monitoring our athletes, but what we're going to be talking about next is the outcomes that we want to get out of those assessing and what numbers specifically we are looking at. So as I just said, we know how we are monitoring and assessing our athletes. The next step is what exactly are we looking for from these tests, and how should these tests look after the program ends at the end of the season. The stats I'm going to be using are based on the separate divisions of college baseball. And since we are a D3 school, to give us a starting point, I'm going to be assuming Division III performance stats as a baseline for our potential athletes, just so we have something to work from. Then these specific numbers are based on the NCSA college baseball recruiting guidelines, just to give us some numbers that we can specifically look at. As Jack said before, due to equipment constraints, we cannot properly measure most of the official MLB combine tests, but we can measure what we are going to be testing, and we can properly measure one or two of them. Let's get into the one that we can properly measure, the 60-yard dash. We cannot measure this specifically in our facility, but outside we can easily track this. The performance is obviously based on the time of completion in seconds. Based on the NCSA, Division III athletes are assumed to have a 7.0 to a 7.1 second assumed starting point to give us something to start with for our athletes. Obviously, at the end of the program, breaking that 7-second barrier would be a great accomplishment, especially if we can do that consistently for our elite end athletes and maybe even the rest of them. D1 schools are looking for between 6.5 and 6.8 seconds, depending on position. So this would be an ideal goal for some of our top end players who want to go on to better things. For another test that we can somewhat properly do is range of motion. A study involving MLB pitchers showed an external rotation of 124.8 degrees plus or minus 19.5, and a total range of motion of 196 plus or minus 22.1 degrees. Being the most important thing being that total wants to be above 180 degrees in order to prevent injury. Limited shoulder range of motion, according to articles, is associated with a 2.5 times increased risk for shoulder injury. So making sure our athletes have proper range of motion is extremely important. Striving for these numbers within these ranges is a useful starting point for all our athletes before getting more specific depending on the needs of our different athletes. Another thing that's important, as Brock mentioned, hip injuries are common, and a range of motion between 37.0 to 37.7 for internal rotation or 30.8 to 32.8 for external rotation seems to be the generally agreed upon amount of range of motion needed in order to have the best chance of avoiding injury. For our strength-related testing, this is a testing where, for a lot of this, we just didn't have the proper equipment to measure things like force off a jump plate, or bat velocity, RPM of the ball, or speed of the ball. So we're going to be doing things like deadlifts, squats, benches instead. And this is stuff that we can sort of just track in-house, as reliable data for these exercises isn't really seen for MLB or Division I players. But obviously we're going to be wanting to increase our athletes' 1 rep max for all these exercises, as well as their 3 rep max, depending on whether we're trying to look for maximum strength or power, or sort of a more endurance thing, such as when a batter has to hit multiple times. We also want to increase the throwing distance of medicine balls through those torso exercises, if possible. And for the future of our program and future performance assessment, our program really will need to invest in the required equipment to perform the MLB Combine tests, as well as any other tests we deem necessary over the course of our program. This lack of equipment was mostly due to a lack of oversight and experience on our part, but in the future, if our program is successful, we hope to invest into all this equipment to make our testing more accurate and be able to give the best chance to our players to make it to a higher end. Next, Avery's going to go into our off-season microcycle.
Hello, my name is Avery Love. I'm going to be talking about the microcycles. For the first one here, we have off-season. So when we look at the off-season microcycle, we're really looking to improve overall strength, and overall we're just looking at trying to really build on some of the big exercises that we have, and we're going to be looking at the big 3. So we have 4 sessions per week. We're going to be doing a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday schedule. Hopefully this schedule allows us to work with the NCAA rules, as they have time requirements, especially for the off season, for when we can really get those lifts in and how much time we have per week with team functions. So looking at this, we're going to have the same card all the way through the 4 sessions. We're going to be going through a lower, an upper, another lower, and another upper session through these 4 sessions. And every card is going to look about the same. So every card, we're going to start with bringing our athletes in. We're going to have a dynamic warm-up, and then we're going to be going through kind of like a medicine ball warm-up activation. We're really going to want to get that heart rate elevated. And every card is going to have 3 tiers, and all 3 tiers are going to have basically a one main lift that we're really focusing on putting a lot of our time into. As you can see with our day 1 lower lift, we're going to be looking into that front squat, which is part of that big 3. And we're going to have a warm up of 10 reps of just with the bar. So we're going to be warming up strictly with the bar, getting into that lift. Then we're going to be going to 5 reps. Each set is going to have 5 reps. These 5 reps is going to have a high intensity. We want these 5 reps to be a really good weight that we're kind of like maximizing our power into. And we're going to be looking for that like 75 to 80% intensity here. We don't really want to fail here, but we don't want to go any higher than 5 reps. And then we're going to go off into 2 accessory lifts under that one main lift here. We're going to be going into a band Palloff press here. You're going to have 6 reps of those with 3 seconds of a hold on each set. And then we're going to be going into monster walks lateral. It's just meaning we're going to be monster walking 10 each side, left and right. Then we're going to be going down into our tier 2 here, and still sticking with that high leverage power in the barbell RDL. We're also going to be doing another warm up of 10 reps with that bar. And then we're going to go straight into it at 5 reps. Once again, we're maximizing those 5 reps as much as possible. And then we're going to go into some accessory lifts that are core based, like the V-up. These accessory lifts are super important to involve our core and involve our hips and stuff like that. Especially in pitchers, we look at having a lot of accessory lifts with the shoulders. Maintaining that stability through the shoulders is really important. And then that tier 3, you can tell it looks a little bit different than the top 2 tiers. We're going to have 3 exercises in the tier 3 lift. These 3 are going to be a little bit lighter. It's going to be more of like a loosen up or a little bit of activation after kind of the big lifts. So we have Nordic hamstring curls, kettlebell swings, and banded clamshells. These aren't going to be too intense, but it is going to have some effects later after we do some of the big lifts that we have. With this tier 3, we just have 2 sets of each exercise. And it's not, as you can see, it's not a whole lot. It's kind of just working in some of the extra pieces that we didn't get to during lift. Here for the day 2 upper lift that we have, we're looking at the same exact thing, 3 tiers, 2 main lifts with some accessory lifts. We're looking at a bench press, and this can difference between position players and pitchers. Position players, they're able to use the bar. It's not too intense on them. As throwers, as pitchers that throw every day, we're looking more into that dumbbell neutral grip position. Same thing, we're going to be doing a warm-up with push-ups, and then we're going to go into some core activation and some shoulder activation as well. Simple and easy, just like the first card. After that one big one, we have 2 accessory lifts to go with it. Moving down to tier 2, we're going to have the same exact thing. We're going to have a barbell bent over row, that warm-up consisting of the bar, and we're getting into those 5 reps again. We're trying to maximize those 5 reps as possible while increasing weight, hoping to increase weight by 5 to 10 pounds at minimum. And then you can see we still have some of those accessory lifts to go with it, just getting into those shoulder activations. And then moving down to tier 3 here, it's going to be the same thing. It's not going to be too intense, but we really want to work that upper body here in this section with lat pull downs, goblet lateral squats, and dumbbell shrugs. This is kind of just that finishing piece to that workout. And then, then going into the day 3 and day 4 of that microcycle for the off season. Same thing, we're looking into that big 3, that trap bar deadlift, really focusing on grip strength here and overall strength of the lower body while inducing some core and back workout. We're going to have a warm-up, 10 reps, 135 pounds, going into some accessory lifts such as Russian twist, which is good for the core, monster walks, which is good for the glutes and the hips, and then going down to the tier 3, we have a dumbbell goblet squat with some hip bridges and dead bug series, still maintaining core strength and some hip activation as well. Tier 3, same exact thing as what we've been talking about. We're going to have 2 sets of each exercise. Just with some reverse lunges, landmine press, and back extension. I think it's very important for us to mix in some of those exercises that, even when it's a lower day, we mix in some upper body exercises just so that we don't fatigue throughout the whole session. Day 4, back to upper. I want to include this into the big 3 to make it a big 4. Something that's very important is neutral grip pull-ups. I think it's very important in the overall strength of the upper body, especially for pitchers. We're looking for 15 total reps in the pull-ups, but if you can get 15 easily, we're looking at doing 5 per set. Then we have 2 accessory lifts, as always, looking into shoulder activation. Tier 3, we have weighted push-ups, also very important in upper body strength, with 2 accessory lifts as well, side plank with core and band X pulls with shoulders. And then the tier 3, we just have those finishing pieces with the TRX row, dumbbell split squat, and cable anti-rotation. So now moving on to the in-season microcycle. This is really looking at kind of maintaining that strength, not overdoing it. We don't want to be too intense. We want to keep that intensity up with the same amount of volume while looking a little more explosive here and a little more of like stabilizing what strength we have already. So these cards are going to be a little bit different now that we're in season. We're going to be looking at only 2 tiers here just because these players are going through a lot of stress on and off the field. So you can see we're going to have a day 1 lower, day 2 upper, and a day 3 lower. The different kind of tiers are pretty similar to what we were talking about earlier. We're going to have that 1 main lift in the tier 1 with that yoke squat, and we're going to be doing the same warm-up that we've been doing throughout the fall. And then we're going to include some of these accessory lifts as well. So with the first 2 sets, we're going to be looking at doing this set 1 right here, pal off press and the TRX row. We're going to be looking at maintaining that through that first set, the first 2 sets at the top. And then once we get down to that bottom 2, you can see that we're really utilizing that second set right there through the black burn and the hamstring curls. For the tier 2, it's the same thing, same kind of setup as the tier 1. We're going to be looking at that 1 main lift with some really good accessory lifts, including the core and stabilization of the shoulder. We're going to see the same thing with the day 2 upper. We're kind of getting to that repetitive stage here, but we're looking at tier 1 with 1 big lift and some accessory lifts. You can see that we're still maintaining that core strength and still mixing in some lower body exercises, even with that upper, like with the rear leg split squats. And then same thing down here, tier 2, We have a NutriGrip bench, still trying to maintain that explosiveness and power, and just keeping that strength as we go through the season. And so that's what's important about the microcycle, is just really keeping that strength up.
It's froze. Hello everyone, I'm Brandon Bates, and I'm going to be just covering briefly a few takeaways and some new and interesting research to dealing with a bat swing. So, again, we're training athletes to be successful both on and off the field, both during their career and after their career as well, instilling values that enhance their leadership skills. So the main system being trained for bioenergetic purposes is the ATP-PC phosphocreatine system to a high degree, and of course then to a lesser degree the glycolytic system, focusing again on high intensity and short burst movements. So the most common injuries in baseball, we've covered a lot of that. Also hand and wrist, dealing with sprains, strains, dislocations, and fractures. One of the most common injuries that lead to a surgery for baseball players is a hook of hamate fracture. Now, despite the hamate being surrounded by the pisiform, the lunate, the capitate, and the fourth and the fifth metacarpals, that hook portion happens to rest right where the tip of at the end of the baseball bat lies. So that repetitive swinging motion with a lot of strain and stress on that can cause that fracture. And this usually presents with ulnar-sided wrist pain. Other injuries, of course, talked about hamstring, ankle, shoulder, and elbow pain. So interesting with some research, a common way to warm up for a bat swing is to use a weighted bat. But what they're finding is, despite this feeling of swinging a heavier bat and then a lighter bat and thinking that you're swinging faster, they're finding that the research shows that bat swing might actually be decreasing a little bit. So they're looking into, which by the way is called the kinesthetic illusion. So they're looking into a dynamic moment of inertia bat, which forces the athlete to really focus on how fast they're swinging that bat, and as well as their timing. And they're finding that that is increasing their bat speed and swing. The reason this is important is because for a 1.6 mile an hour increase in bat swing, this equates to 16 feet further than the ball travels. If the ball travels further, better chance of hitting home runs, more wins. So off season, we're looking at focusing on maintaining that increasing that strength gains. We're looking at 4 sessions per week, 2 lower body exercises, 2 upper body routines, and dealing with, both are going to be focusing on that core exercise as well in both of those. In season, we're going to be working on maintaining the strength gains that we did in the off season, lowering some intensity, as well as trying to maintain some of the same volume of exercise. These are our references. We can't say it any better than you, Dr. Williams. You're